Welcome to the Prancing Horse Podcast. I'm glad you can join us to learn about the history and culture of the world-famous Ferrari. I'm your host, Ajay, and I'm excited to kick off our Prancing Horse Podcast with this very first history episode. My goal is to share the Prancing Horse culture with not only current but also future generations to come. This series is going to start at the very beginning before the brand was even created. We'll call it Episode 0, and then we will travel all the way to the present time. I will be keeping these episodes coming with all sorts of new things to learn, but without further ado, let's travel back in time to where it all began. Buckle up. Big thank you to that F12 TDF there for adding to our introduction, so let's hop right into our first history episode. Enzo Ferrari was the founder of Ferrari, both the race team and the road cars. He was born in 1898 to Ada Glesia and Alfredo. His father, Alfredo, was a metal worker who had a metal fabrication shop he ran from the family home. Alfredo was crucial in Enzo's early years. You see, his father took him to a race in Bologna at the age of 10. This is when Enzo was bitten by the racing bug that would shape his future and ultimately be the motivating factor in starting Ferrari as a brand. Fun fact, Enzo also wanted to be an opera singer. In 1916, his older brother, Alfredo Jr., also known as Dino, and his father died from a bad case of the Italian flu that was sweeping through Italy. This forced him to step more into manhood, and he quickly joined the Modena Fire Service as an instructor. After that, in 1917, he joined the Italian army to shoe mules for the 3rd Alpine Artillery Division. In 1918, Enzo became very sick with the flu himself during the 1918 flu pandemic. Because of this, he was consequently honorably discharged from military service. With the family business collapsing due to the death of his father, Enzo began searching for a job in the automotive industry. After being written off by Fiat, he settled on a job as a test driver for CMN, Costruzioni Meccaniche Nazionali. They were a car manufacturer in Milan that built passenger cars out of used truck bodies. He shortly after was promoted to race car driver and made his debut in the 1919 Parma Poggio de Bersetto hill climb race in a 2.3-liter. He finished 4th in this debut race in the 3-liter category. Later in the year, he took part in the Targa Florio. Targa Florio was an endurance race held on public roads in the mountains of Sicily. It was a race around the whole island consisting of 3 laps of a 92-mile circuit totaling 276 miles, with around 2,000 corners per lap and 3,600 feet of elevation change on treacherous mountain roads. Enzo would retire this race with a leaky fuel tank. Due to the large amount of cars that suffered mechanical failures, though, he would still finish 9th, a great achievement given the small team he was racing for. In 1920, Enzo joined the racing department of Alfa Romeo as a driver. He won his first race with Alfa Romeo in 1923, Ravenna, Italy, on the Savio circuit. After winning, he met the parents of World War I fighter pilot Francesco Baracca, who suggested Enzo use the Prancing Horse logo. In 1924, he would take home 3 wins at Ravenna, Polesine, and Pescara. After the death of Ugo Savocci in 1923, he admittedly began racing half-heartedly while being drawn to the organizational aspects of motor racing. In 1929, he began pulling his own team together, called Scuderia Ferrari. In 1931, Enzo raced his last race, and shortly after, in 1932, his son Alfredo, who would later be known as Dino, was born. He began managing and developing the Alfa race cars, where he assembled strong teams of drivers such as Giuseppe Campari and Tazio Nuvolari under the Scuderia Ferrari team name. The team found great success thanks to great drivers like Nuvolari and Campari, as well as amazing cars such as the Alfa Romeo P3, a 1,500-pound supercharged 8-cylinder monster. During this time, the team's cars started wearing the Prancing Horse logo that would later become the Cavallino and be a part of the Scuderia Shield. Alfa Romeo agreed to partner the Scuderia Ferrari team, but in 1933, due to financial troubles, Alfa Romeo withdrew their support, but was quickly retracted thanks to the intervention of Pirelli, the tire manufacturer. Although having massively talented drivers, the team struggled to compete with Auto Union and Mercedes. Although they were struggling, they did manage to take first place and top podium at the German Grand Prix, narrowly edging out Mercedes on their home turf. In 1937, the Scuderia Ferrari team was dissolved due to Alfa Romeo wanting full control of the racing division. They now operated under the name Alfa Corsa. Retaining Enzo as the sporting director until 1939, when Enzo had a disagreement with Alfa's managing director. With Enzo leaving, a clause in his contract was in place stating he would not race or design any new cars for 4 years. Shortly after leaving Alfa Romeo, Enzo then founded Auto Avio Costruzioni in his hometown of Modena, a company whose purpose was to supply other racing teams with parts as well as the Italian government with aircraft parts and tools. The agreement with Alfa Romeo to not build cars and stay away from racing, well, it didn't last very long. In secrecy, Enzo built 2 cars, the Auto Avio Costruzzi 815 for the 1940 Mille, a 1,000-mile open road race through the Italian countryside. These 2 cars were driven by Alberto Ascari, who would later go on to win 2 world titles racing for Enzo, as well as Vittorio Rangoni. Although the cars were beautiful, they did both have to withdraw from the race due to engine issues, but not before setting a lap record for the 1500cc or 1.5-liter class. Unfortunately, after an accident, Rangoni sent the 815 to the scrapyard not long before he lost his life in World War II. His brother tried to save the car, but it was crushed before he could. Chassis 020 was lost forever. However, Chassis 021, the car driven by Ascari, still lives on in a museum near Modena. With World War II ramping up and the fascist Italian government in full swing, Enzo was forced to use his factory in Modena to aid in the war efforts, building auto parts for the Italian military, delaying his true passion of building cars. In 1943, Enzo moved his factory to Maranello, Italy, after an Allied bombing struck the factory in Modena. Shortly after, in 1944, the new factory was also bombed, but later rebuilt. At this time, they were mainly building precision grinding machines for the military as well as other military hardware. All in all, the war was a good thing for Enzo, as the military contracts would help Enzo obtain enough capital necessary to move forward with his dream. And after the war, Enzo decided to start making cars bearing his name, and in 1947, Ferrari SPA was founded. Thank you so much for listening to our episode today. Make sure you follow us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts so you don't miss any of our new content. You can also interact with us on Facebook, Instagram, and PrancingHorsePodcast.com. As always, Forza Ferrari.